Okay. I just wanted to make sure that this thing was rolling first, but what's up, guys? So, my name's thebesttaco, and I basically just wanted to give you guys kind of my personal thoughts on the recent itemization reworks that have taken place here in Season 7 for Smite Conquest, and one thing in particular. Because I am very keen on hunters. For anybody that or excuse me, for anybody that doesn't know, hunters are basically my thing. I've always preferred the ADC role to the other roles in Smite, and with Season 7 upon us now, this might be a little bit early. Maybe I'm pulling the trigger a little bit too soon on this, but I've been doing a theory craft for a little bit now since the start of the season, and with the help of the young homie, I believe that we have essentially discovered probably the best possible hunter build that you could go right now in I think the vast majority of matchups. A couple of anomaly situations I would maybe throw out there is if you're against a mage ADC, I wouldn't really recommend this build. It is a little bit more risk versus reward oriented, depending on how much magical carry damage is actually available on the enemy team. For example, if they have like a Giannis mid and then like an Olaren ADC, you probably don't want to go for this build pathway. But physical hunters are definitely showing up a lot more than what I initially expected when I first saw a lot of the itemization changes and buffs happening across the board for mage items specifically. And where it left hunters, I think, is not necessarily in a niche position so much as hunters are kind of just in a position where if you can't buy crit, it definitely feels a little bit scuffed, but I don't think that it's the end all be all for hunters with or without the crit, especially since 9 times out of 10, crit is still going to be pretty impactful against a lot of the tankier members. But all of that aside, getting back on track to what I was initially talking about with the physical hunter build, and this being what I believe to be the best possible option that you could go for your starting build pathway as a physical hunter. I have it pulled up on Honor. Honor is just like a general example. I will be making another video on which top 5 hunters I believe are currently the best right now in Season 7. But again, this video I wanted to specifically focus on this new ADC build that homie and I kind of theory crafted our way through. And so, kind of jumping right into things for the starter item, Hunter's Blessing. I think pretty traditional, pretty standard. You almost always want to go Hunter's Blessing as any hunter right now. I think that it's just too valuable having that 15% additional attack speed and the 15 bonus basic attack damage. Even though I do believe there is some viability in the Mage's Blessing for some hunters that are a little bit more ability based. For the most part, I just feel like personally Hunter's Blessing is your best bang for your buck right now as a physical ADC. And after that, what I have been doing is actually coming right over here to our little friend, the round shield. 10 physical power, 5 physical protection. Seems small, but is actually a pretty big deal. And I know, I don't remember if it was the start of season 5 or the start of season 6. One of those seasons, uh, this build was definitely experimented with a fair bit. And I think that it's actually surfaced again here in season 7 because of a lot of the shifts in hunter items as well as in mage items. But basically, to break it down, I start with the round shield. I get 2 health pots, 1 multi-pot, because a lot of times you're relying on your autos to clear the waves more so than your actual abilities for most of the hunters. And what I've also been doing, and I've toyed around with it a fair bit, if you really feel like your survivability is a heavy concern, then you don't have to rush this item right away. But personally, for me, I have been liking it a little bit more, just looking for the immediate shifter shield rush. It's 2,400 gold, and I think one of the most prevalent builds that I've seen as a competitor to this build pathway is the bloodforge start. But if you take a look at bloodforge, it's 400 more gold, 75 physical power, which is only 5 power more than what you get off of the shifter shield rush. And if the other hunter is rushing a Bloodforge, they're still going to have limited mobility like you with the boots, except they're not going to have the same level of survivability. Because while you're over 75% health, you gain the plus 35 physical power. That's where I'm getting the plus 70 physical power, technically speaking, from finishing this item. That's a pretty big power spike as well to have at the start of a game, especially for some of the hunters that chunk a little bit heavier with their autos anyway. Looking at like Xbalanque, on her, Hui, they all hit pretty damn hard at the start of these matches. And I just think that the passive as well is what really sells me on Shifter Shield over the Bloodforge Rush. Because with Shifters, not only is it 400 less gold than a Bloodforge, but you also gain 35 magical prots and 35 physical prots while you go under 75% health. And the reason why this is so critical for this build is the fact that you just don't lose your 1v1 traits. This stat alone is just an insane power spike. So like even if you're behind an enemy hunter by like 1,000 gold or more, a lot of times you can still have a good chance to win a 1v1 exchange just because of the power spike that this item offers. And I'll get a little bit more into that breakdown later on, or at the end of the finalized build here. But just kind of keep things going with why I think this is better than Bloodforge is, I mean, largely the fact that it's 400 gold less, but also I think that the passive is a lot easier to control your 1v1 situations in comparison to Bloodforge, where, yeah, you get a really cool health shield if you kill somebody, but the odds of you winning a 1v1 that heavily just off of Bloodforge alone, a little bit sus, I'm not going to lie. The 15% physical lifesteal really does not amount to much when you don't have anything aside from the 75 physical power if they're rushing this item. Because, again, I mostly see a lot of players, including a lot of pros, that have been rushing Bloodforge right away. But I definitely think that Shifter Shield is just a significantly better option. It's cheaper. It's got a way better passive at the start of the game. It gives you way more survivability for jungle ganks as well. So even if you don't have your freebie ward to place down, you can still choose to be a little bit more aggressive, I think, just because of the fact that it's really hard to lose a 1v1 matchup with the power spike that Shifters presents. And right now, I think it's a little bit sleeper. I don't think many people are really onto this build just yet, but kind of carrying things through. For me personally, I like to go for the Ninja Tabi. I value attack speed, and rushing Shifters does mean that you're sacrificing a little bit of attack speed potentially, but Ninja Tabi can certainly help to make up for that a lot. You can look for Warrior Tabi also if you just want to keep escalating that power spike, but I really do think that as a hunter, there's a lot of value to be added into the Ninja Tabi, also because of the fact that it has that plus 100 mana, and with the Shifters build, you're going to be having some mana concerns, I think. Not that, like, it's anything extreme, but it's definitely noticeable in comparison to having a starter item like, Transcendence, for example. But, again, even if you compare Shifters to an item like Transcendence, it's 200 gold less than Transcendence. The only one that's really on the same playing field as it would be the Devo Gloves. But again, for Devo Gloves, you still have to maximize your stack potential. And really, until you get 50 stacks online, Devos doesn't feel that good to try and take 1v1 matchups with. It does give a strong argument for like the mid to late game, but the rest of this build, I think, kind of makes up for the mid to late game aspects here. So like I was mentioning, you go for that Shifter's Rush. You go for the attack speed, or for me personally, I go for the Ninja Tabi. And then your third item slot is where things can really get interesting. And this is also, I think, going to be heavily influenced by two things. Enemy team composition and how you're feeling in the game at that specific moment when you finish the first two items. If you feel like you're not having a whole lot of survivability issues, or you're not having to really worry about ganks all that often, but you feel like you're not doing as much damage as you would like to, then I think that you could just look to build an Executioner in your third item slot. But a lot of times, I feel like the early game is a little bit more slow paced because of the fact that there is that free ward for most players up until level 12, and you can buy your secondary relic there instead of having that free ward. And because of that, I've actually been going for the Bloodforge in the third item slot. And I know that it's a rather expensive item buy, but when you combine the 75 physical power plus the 70 physical power from that Shifters, it definitely gives you a really chunky auto attack that I don't think most tanks will have Thebe stacks by then to fully deal with the amount of power that you're exerting. A lot of times, I think that even mages in mid lane or soul lane or wherever else, they're not going to necessarily want to rush that like breastplate of valor at the beginning. And I think that the main reason why Bloodforge works so well in the third item slot here is because of the fact that it's just usually happening so early in the game because there's so much farm available globally now that it's a lot easier to get this item buy build up in the third item slot as opposed to the first item slot. And again, the reason being that 400 gold is a really big difference in the first 7 to 9 minutes of a game in comparison to when you're looking at bloodforge. You're probably going to be starting to buy your bloodforge somewhere around 13 to 15 minutes in the game. And it's just a lot easier for hunters to clear by then because usually you're above level 7 by then. So your abilities are going to be one-shotting the wave, your auto attacks are going to be one-shotting minions, and it's just easier to get that gold in hand for that third item, Bloodforge, as opposed to trying to rush that Bloodforge first item where you don't have as good of clear, you don't have as much survivability either, just because there's still, I think, a lot of gank opportunities for junglers in comparison to later on when you have, I think, more vision available as well, and some soft team fights could be breaking out also. But yeah, just all in all, I really like Bloodforge in third item slot here. Again, you can go for an Executioner here instead, but entirely at your own discretion. As for the fourth item choice, I have personally been really liking Executioner, fourth item here, because it kind of takes care of all your issues of, oh, am I going to have attack speed? Am I going to have enough penetration? Well, this is two birds, one stone. You get to strip away your target's physical protection by 12% for 3 seconds, and max of 3 stacks. That's a lot of prot shred, and that's basically all that you need as a hunter anyway. Again, 25% attack speed, always an awesome stat to have for a hunter, and it's got a little bit of physical power with it also. So Executioner, usually a pretty solid buy, but with season 7 upon us, I do feel it's important to mention I have definitely experienced my fair share of anomaly cases in game where I didn't feel like I necessarily needed pen right away in that fourth item slot. Some examples I could think of is just encountering like heavy mage, heavy assassin compositions, as opposed to like the beefier comps with consisting of like warriors and assassins and tanks. Um, so this is going to largely come down to your own discretion and how the game is personally feeling for you at that point. But if you don't feel like you're having much of an issue dealing damage or shredding through the front line or anything like that, then you don't necessarily have to lock yourself into this executioner pickup. You could, in fact, look for the alternative, which is Rage. 2,300 gold, also an insanely cheap item. It's 50 gold less than Executioner. And both, I think, are really solid options. And the reason being that Rage wouldn't be an awful pickup buy in the fourth item slot is because the Rage passive is insane. You can get 45% critical strike chance with this Rage if you finish stacking the passive. And you typically want to get those Rage stacks online as soon as possible. That way, you're a lot more difficult to deal with as the game continues to develop. And usually, this is like the mid game period by now. So you definitely want to have those rage stacks in for the late game. But again, this is really only if you don't feel like you're having that many issues dealing with the front line or dealing damage, things like that. This can be great to help further build upon that initial power spike we were speaking of that comes from the shifters and the Bloodforge already. But if you want to play it the safe route, like I said, nothing wrong with that. Slap on your executioner and call it a day and be happy. That's all I'm saying. Like you can just slap on that exy and you're fine. Okay, did they just reset my build? All right, a little bit weird, a little bit sus, but it's all good. We can fix that real quick. I'll just toss these back up here. We already knew where everything went. Just a smite feature, guys. Don't mind me. All right, and yeah, like I was saying, if you want to play it safe, nothing wrong with that. Let's assume you're playing it safe. Slap on that executioner right there. So as you can already probably assume, next item definitely going to be that rage. Again, I do think that these three items specifically are a little bit interchangeable. This is really going to come down to your own player assessment throughout your match, because one thing that I've always loved about Smite is the fact that there's no such thing as one like guaranteed build pathway. You can always kind of be a little bit more flexible with your itemization choices as the game develops. Anyway, getting back on track here. So, last but not least, you guys could probably assume if you got a rage, you're going to want some more crit to add on top of that. Deathbringer has been my personal favorite to close this build out with, and I honestly think that it is just such an incredible power spike and survivability option. And then if it goes late enough into the game, you can always sell this Ninja Tabi, and you can sell your boots for the Aussie. But that's only if you get to that point in the match where you can actually, afford a speed pot, because that's 1500 gold and plus affording another 25-50 gold item. So you're real late game if you're selling those boots for the Aussie. But again, if you are going to sell your boots, Aussie is definitely the item that you want to sell it for, largely because of the fact that it synchronizes so well with the bloodforge, gives your hunter even more survivability. And the sustain is always just really nice to have if you're looking to pull like objectives on your own and things like that. But all in all, this is my personal favorite build to do right now. I think it is the best build for hunters right now in Season 7 as well, across the board. I think that you could do this build on literally every single hunter, and it will work. And going back track a little bit here, because I told you guys, I was like, hey, this is the best build. I'm going to show you guys something that happened just a little bit earlier today even to further, pinpoint the fact that I think that this is the best build that you could possibly look for. So, kind of get things started, give you guys a little bit of background here. As you can clearly tell, I'm against a Cernanos here. I am on her. I have Rush Shifter Shield. I have Boots too. At this point in the game, um, the Cernanos has Rush Bloodforge. He is also at Boots 2. You're going to have to take my word for it because I don't know if I hit tab here to give you guys the proof in the pudding, but like I was saying, you can clearly see I am 2 level deficit. I don't know if you guys can look real hard right here at this level 8. I am a level 8 Hunter against a level 10 Cernanos. I have already died one time. I was first blooded actually because we went for a really aggressive. My Ares and I tried to invade on their mini buff minion. My Ares didn't know that Hog only works on your own camps, so we lost that. And yeah, needless to say, I died, and then my Ares died a couple more times. That gave the Cernanos a really big lead against me, but that's all, just a little bit of background information for you guys. There's a full wave coming in. The Cernanos is obviously going to charge me because he's got, such a steep gold advantage over me. He's like 1,000 gold up on me at this point. So first things first, I throw out the pillar. But this is where things get important because he's still trying to fight me. He's got the full wave advantage also. But you can tell that the initial protections from that shifters are helping me mitigate some of the damage being dealt from that minion or from that full minion wave. And so I'm already slightly up on this CERN from the get-go. Of course, my tower is going to help me finish the job. But this Cernanos still playing really aggressive on my tower line. And I guess maybe you can make the argument, oh, why is the CERN still there? But when you've got like a level and a half advantage over someone, I kind of don't blame him. He predicted that I would jump in, immediately go for the beads. And this is where I'm going to take a second to pause because, again, I really do feel like it's important to just kind of highlight the fact that I've got the Shifter's Rush. He's got the Bloodforge Rush. And that was like as perfect of a start as you could want for a Bloodforge Rush. But because of the Shifter's passive here, as this 1v1 develops, I just have a significant advantage because as my health bar is dropping, I'm getting tankier and tankier. Meanwhile, the CERN, not in the same boat. I win this level 1, or I win this 1v1 solely because of the fact that I have shifters. There I hit tab for a second so you guys can clearly see we have the exact same amount of items right now. Both of our Hunter's Blessings are stacked. Well, he had a 1,000 gold lead over me before I killed him and got all that gold. I got like 300 gold off of that. So yeah, you can clearly see he definitely had the 300 gold or the 1,000 gold advantage over me. He had boots 2. I have boots 2. But I've got shifters and he's got bloodforge. 70 power versus 75 power. But the passive in the shifters is why I won this exchange. That is the only way that I was ever going to win that 1v1 is because of that shifter's passive activating. So you can imagine my excitement, obviously, when this all took place. And again, I guess you can maybe make the argument of like, oh, well, the certain should have backed off. But honestly, would you back off if you're like 2 levels ahead of somebody over 1,000 gold? You have a full minion wave to your advantage also, and you know that they're jumping in on you? I kind of don't blame him. But people are really sleeping right now, I think, on this Shifters build. You guys can go ahead and try it out for yourselves. Let me know what you think. But I think that you guys are going to be pretty satisfied with the success rate that you will probably have in your ranked games off of that build. So just a little something I want to share with you guys. on my updated thoughts for Season 7, where Physical Hunters are at, and more importantly, what is the Season 7 Hunter build. I think that this is the Season 7 Hunter build right now. For physical ADCs, that is. Magical ADCs, obviously a different world, but for physical hunters, I think this is definitely the best bang for your buck itemization choices that you could possibly go for. And yeah, other than that, I hope you guys let me know what your thoughts are. You can leave a comment down below and let me know if there's anything else you'd like to maybe hear my thoughts on, or maybe you have like your own like critiques or just analysis that you want to add yourself. But personally speaking, and I've played this a lot by the way, I have soloed just about every single 1v1 matchup that I've ever had with somebody when I've rushed shifters first. And I get it, it's ranked. Like anything happens in ranked, anything goes in ranked a lot of times. But I'm not playing against like complete randies. Like I'm playing against other masters level players and things like that. And I mean, I know that the rank system isn't in the greatest spot possible, but I like to think that I'm playing against some pretty solid players, and I just feel like this is the build. So, again, hope for let me know what you guys think, and have a great day.